Welcome back to the Talking Hedge. I'm Josh Kincaid, Capital Markets Analyst and host of your Cannabis Business Podcast. We've got Katrina Glogowski. She's an angel investor and attorney from Seattle. Thanks for being back on the podcast.
Morning, Josh.
Today, we're going to look at Headset's report, a year in review, looking at some cannabis trends and takeaways, maybe taking a look at some of their crystal ball predictions. See what they've got in store. They talk about how the industry has been in a wild ride, continues a steady clip. The industry found itself with some misinformation and panic with the vaping crisis, also with a lot of the publicly traded stocks decreasing last year. Total market share last year with all transaction tracked via Headset grew from 388 million in January of 2019 to 517 million in November, a 33% increase in overall market size, which is remarkable for a year in which no new states joined the legal cannabis market. By extension, it shouldn't be much of a surprise that California, still the newest, was responsible for most of that growth. And yet, I just got off a very long conversation with the gentleman in California who's looking at trying to scale up, looking to automate. I met him in Canada at the Lift Expo that we were both recently at. And his outlook for California is not good. I mean, with everything we've seen in Canada and every other market with slow growth, slow rollouts, issues, he's not all that optimistic about California.
California needs to rehaul their regulations, which is the process is in the works, and hopefully they can turn it around.
Mm-hmm. So to compare what Headset has done with some other things that we've seen in the market, there's 6 websites that I looked at with 67 predictions. So it's a small data set, but gives us an idea in terms of what's going on. So within that is Green Entrepreneur, Leafly, Benzinga, 420 Intel, Motley Fool, and the Fresh Toast. And so looking at all of those predictions and aggregating those into 7 criteria or topics, you can see that price and profit is the number one prediction. And really, a lot of these 2020 predictions are more of reactionary than any kind of harbinger or any kind of forward-looking crystal ball prediction. Obviously, price and profit are paramount this year, with everyone needing to have positive cash flow. I think that by looking at California, looking at their regulation, easily falls into the legalization and regulation. 20% of the people predicted that it's just whatever is being regulated or legalized is going to continue to have its ups and downs. And obviously, you don't need a crystal ball because every single regulated market has gone through this.
Agreed.
So looking at California more closely, you can see that their growing market was thanks in no small part to simple maturity. 2018 regulatory issues abound, with a lot of businesses facing difficulty making that transaction from medical to recreation. Some went as far to describe the July 1st compliance deadline for the new state's emergency regulation as an extinction event. And that's no different than the overall market. I think we saw 60% contraction in the stock market overall. There were 100 publicly traded companies at the beginning of the year and 40 at the end. That's also 60%. And we've talked on this podcast before about the normalization in restaurant industries with 85% failing. That's no different. So maybe it's just about time that some of these investors pull the plug and realize that these zombies aren't making any money.
Right.
But California does have the 5th largest GDP in the world, so there's a lot more speculation down there. They've had a huge black market from the Emerald Triangle from inception, so there's going to be probably a lot of people that drag their feet. When you look into other states like Colorado, the oldest legal market, had the next best performance. California's growth in average daily sales was 66%, far and away the highest. But for a market that would expect to be tapped out as Colorado, 34% isn't bad. Nevada, surprisingly, didn't expand much, only seeing 15% growth, while Washington lingered at 14%. So at the end of the day, they're talking about growth. So it's not the numbers that should be troubling. Overall, the market is performing well. Even states that have joined nearly 6 years of legal sales are gaining ground. One of the interesting aspects is that there's going to be a big shakeout. So Green Entrepreneur said that there's going to be a shakeout. um, and that consolidation in the hemp industry with the huge fourth quarter. That fourth quarter that they're talking about is from just capitulation. So that consolidation is going to force a lot of those companies that are still around to make up that market share. And so again, with price and profit being almost 24%, it's definitely the leading theme is being lean and being having a profit margin from increased sales.
As you would expect in any market maturity, tolerance for risk is much higher in the beginning. Now we're not in the beginning anymore. Where's my money?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So growth is always good news, but the year did have some bad. Manufacturers of vape pens, category that everybody had high hopes for, found themselves in a lot of public relation crisis. If you add concentrates and vape together, it's easily the number one category in terms of SKUs. Pre-rolls sell the most, but I think the most popular category is the vape and concentrate market. And so sales for vape pens spent most of the year below previous levels. So from early August 2019, when the news of the vaping related illness first broke, to mid-September's when that started to trickle off, the vape pen category went from 25% total market share to 19. So after that, it fell a few points more, basically stayed stuck around 18 for the rest of the year. And you see certain states, I think Massachusetts isn't allowing vaping, and I think Alberta isn't going to allow vape sales either. So definitely kind of a scar on the industry from having a basic vitamin E acetate that sounds normal, but when you don't know chemistry and you don't know what happens when it's combusted, is not good. Kind of like Eagle 20, it's an herbicide, but when combusted, it's carcinogenic. Same issue. So if you don't understand chemistry, probably shouldn't get involved with something like this. Otherwise, there are serious lawsuits.
Yes. If you are a cannabis company, cannabis lab, cannabis retailer, grower, processor, edible maker, know what you are putting in your product. I don't care what your product is, but if you don't know what you're putting into it, if you don't understand what you're putting into it, don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Just don't.
Yeah, and getting the cheapest product isn't nearly the right thing to do. Like if you were going to be looking at food, you probably wouldn't try to get the cheapest food because that would start to ring alarm bells. Like, what am I eating? And cannabis is the same thing. So there's an individual in California who wanted to find the cheapest cartridges, and that wasn't really my thing. I don't look for the cheapest. I look for the best and most affordable. It's about value. And so when you look for cheap, what you're going to find is maybe some of these carts were dipped in diesel to clean them. Then you have a lot of that heavy metal leaching and a lot of these other issues. So if it's not the actual derivative, the extract, it might be the hardware. Either way, I mean, all of this stuff needs to mature and figure out it needs to be a trusted product. Those brands need to instill trust and confidence.
Absolutely. Every other industry faces this exact same issue. Quality control, knowing what's going on in your product. When you have a tainted product, as happens, there's tainted food with the E. coli, some cross contamination. It happens rarely, but it does. Be proactive about it. Get in front of it. I'm stunned that this happened. Uh, we didn't see too much of it in Washington per se, not from the legal stores, of course. Black market is a whole nother matter. That gets to you get what you pay for. When there's no barcode on it, you don't know where it came from. But again, it's a business. You're going to get sued. So make sure you know what's going in it.
Mm-hmm. So while the vape crisis shattered consumer trust, it made for previous pot-loving people to stop wanting to consume cannabis. They're looking at sales data for categories that could be described as a good replacement, like edibles, pre-rolls. So they contain plenty of discrete single-use items that saw a lot of pickup from the dip in vape sales as people kind of transitioned over to other products. So both categories saw market share growth in the exact same period that vape pen markets were shrinking. Edibles going from 10.5 to 12%, and pre-rolls going from 9 to 10%. So it doesn't add up an even exchange, but the timing is definitely the connection there.
Well, yes, you don't want to die from your vape pen, so you got to find something else.
Yeah, people aren't quitting, just transitioning to a different method.
I actually am glad that the vape crisis occurred. You're going to see players rise to the top, brands rise to the top with trust and a quality product. I do not think the vape crisis is an end to vape cartridges, vape pens for either nicotine or hemp or cannabis. I do think it's just a speed bump. The market will recover, and the good guys will go to the top, which is where they should be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to be about finding that trusted brand for sure. So it's just about maturing in an industry. Vaping was, I think, number 4 on what most people were predicting. Out of the 6 different websites that I looked at and the 67 predictions, vaping and the concern around vaping was up there. There's also a concern about CBD as well. The claims, the FDA, the drop in price, there's going to be a slowdown, maybe new delivery methods with nano products, but the prices are going to have to come down to earth. So the uncertainty around CBD, the uncertainty around vaping, and the regulations that, from New York to everywhere else, definitely on people's minds in the industry. But medical, was number 7. There are about 6% of people that want to know more about medical, the education and the concerns around it. One of the most difficult things is to educate somebody and then sell them on it. And so maybe taking a step back is going to require a higher budgeting for marketing, branding. But I think there is going to be that shift from the low price point being that brand to trust becoming that brand. So that's also an evolution in, a maturing market.
Certainly with CBD, you have very similar issues with CBD as to what am I actually getting? Am I getting what I'm paying for? We've seen massive litigation come in around CBD products, CBD claims. It's going to be interesting, but again, it's a market that's maturing, and if you have a trusted brand, you're going to come to the top. There's also pending federal legislation that's working its way through committee right now to just flat out legalize CBD. Call it, take it out of the schedules, take it out of FDA regulation, or just slap it, label on it, calling it dietary supplement like vitamin C. But it's such a popular product. There's so many questions around it. We'll see if that legislation passes, but at the same time, know what you're putting in your product and know what you're buying.
Mm-hmm.
Just like the vape pens.
So this report concludes by saying that either way, 2020 is sure to be an interesting year. Canada's Cannabis 2.0 as the regulatory framework around allowing for the sale of edibles and other cannabis derivatives, including concentrates and beverages, will see its first products to market in January or February this year. Illinois legalized adult use cannabis in June, saw its first legal sales on New Year's Day. And the state's 37 dispensaries sold 11 million worth of cannabis in just a week. So that could certainly emerge as a major market. And we're all about the data at Headset. So it's worth noting that the governor celebrated the new year pardoning 11,000 cannabis convictions. And so that also falls under legalization and regulation. Edibles and consumption and lounges, that's about 17% of people's predictions for 2020 in the cannabis space. A lot of real estate investment.
Yeah, this has to occur. If you are a legalized state, let's just say Nevada, and you have a recreational cannabis market, and somebody gets off a plane and comes to visit, and you're going to buy a pre-roll, maybe you know what you're doing, maybe you don't, maybe it's a one-off, try it, doesn't matter. Where are you going to smoke it?
Mm-hmm.
You can't smoke it in a hotel room, can't smoke it in a casino, can't smoke it at the public park, can't smoke it at a Starbucks. So where are you going to consume this? I really think that consumption lounges, consumption spaces are going to happen in 2020. The same issue is in Seattle, the same issue in Portland. Any legalized market, yeah, you can buy it, but there's no legal place for you to consume it.
At
Uh,
least Portland has some lounges, so they're in a gray fringe area, whereas Washington has a felony on maintaining a marijuana lounge. And I'm only 3 doors down from my local police station, so I literally walk by them and smoke, and I expect them to say something. I'll take the ticket. I
yeah.
can't remember if it's $27 or $87. Jaywalking is one of those, and cannabis is the other. I get them confused. But I'll laminate the ticket. I'll take it because I don't really care. But it's ridiculous when you don't have an option. It's almost like entrapment. You're going to sell me a product, but then not give me an opportunity to use that product if I rent and I can't consume in my house, and my neighbors don't like it. And then I walk down the street and a cop, gives me a ticket. That's kind of entrapment.
Uh, I agree with the bulk of what you're saying. We need to have safe consumption spaces here in sunny Seattle, where we have heroin injection sites. How come we can't have
Oh,
consumption lounges for marijuana?
killing me with that concept between San Francisco and Seattle wanting to spend $100,000 a month on taxpayer money for a safe heroin injection site when cannabis can wean those people off of that. Give me the opportunity to open up a Seattle Super Chronic Cafe. I'll take those people in through the back door. I'll let them use cannabis and I'll save you $100,000. So that's an insane topic for sure. And maybe it's going to be the new cannabinoid that we heard about when we were in Canada. THCP and CBDP will increase the potency or the effectiveness by as much as a third. So for somebody who is expecting a harder drug like heroin, maybe giving them a good cultivar mixed in with this new cannabinoid that will increase the dosage, if you will. Maybe that's a good combination. I don't know. But the top 7 things that we look at aggregated from these 6 different sites is going to be medical and CBD, cannabinoids and terpenes, vaping, marijuana, consumption and lounges, legalization, but most importantly, price and profit. Number 1, everyone's going to be looking at that. I don't know if this is a little weird, because when we've done this in the past, they are kind of bellwether harbingers or crystal ball futuristic predictions, whereas these all seem like they're reactionary to trends that were already happening. So I feel like either we've reached this plateau, this apex, or we just kind of have to reevaluate what we were doing before we can move forward again.
I don't think we're at the apex. I do think that the market is very new. Uh, you're going to see new products, new strains, new cannabinoids, new delivery methods. I expect to see the market mature and develop over time. Every time I say I've seen it all, something else comes out of nowhere that I've never seen before.
Like a CBD pillow?
The CBD pillow. Yeah, who's making the CBD infused leggings? Whoever's doing that, please stop. I mean, it's just, you're hurting my brain. There's some things the world needs. CBD infused leggings is not one of them. Moving on. Now, the along with that market maturization is price and profit. These are businesses. Even if you're a nonprofit medical provider, you have to make enough money to stay in business. It's been long enough. Experiments over. The uninitiated should already have been weeded out in some of these more mature markets. Now it's time to start making money. It's just the way it's going to go. And if you are not profitable, you are dying. It's not going to work for you. You're not going to get extra credits, extra extensions, extra forgiveness from an investor because you can't do something profitable after 5 years. If you can't do it in 5 years, 6 years, 3 years, sell. And please don't make your exit strategy CBD infused leggings.
Yeah, it's been interesting, this year, just going up to Canada and seeing some of these companies up there struggling and going through a lot of the things that we were talking about as being forward thinking about some of the consolidation, and they're already going through that, living it right now. And so I think the ones that had access to cash early are starting to feel the pinch the first, right? So I think that we'll start to see in the US, some of those companies that started after will start catching up to that crisis, that feeling of capital constraints and having to have a profit model based on revenue and not an LOI, some fictitious future partnership that isn't going to be generating revenue. Those days are over. So yeah, I think the year in review can be recapped by saying it's going to be profitable. There's going to be more products and probably less companies selling those products.
Yep. Consolidation, merger, acquisition, and profit. That's your only choice right now.
Yeah, last year we were looking at tech, like devices that did accurate dosing. We were looking at multi-state operators, MSOs, and also marijuana lounges as a real estate investment trust. I think this year the only goal people want, the crystal ball prediction, is going to be a lot less companies, and those that are still around are actually generating revenue. Not much of a crystal ball prediction. That should just be like normal business. But I think it's night and day, 2019 and 2020 predictions.
I agree.
So I think in about 6 months, we should do a recap, not only 2020 to see where we're at, but also 2019 and kind of see if those predictions came to fruition. So you're going to have to stay tuned in June or July for that semi-annual recap on crystal ball predictions. But with that, I think we're going to roll this one up. I want to thank my guest, Katrina Glogowski, angel investor and attorney. Thanks again for being on the podcast.
Thanks, Josh.
I'm Josh Kincaid. This is the Talking Hedge. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't. And I'm out.